widowed mother who was quite ill and who had respiratory problems, and the pollution in New York City was causing her problems. So the doctor said to George, get your mother out of the city. And Asheville was already established as a very nice place to come for vacation. Asheville's been here for 200 years. So George knew this was going to be long term. So they came in their own private railroad car. George brought his horses, and he's riding around, and you notice that nobody is growing anything. This was all worn out farmland. This was established by the Scotch-Irish in the 1700s. So George looks into buying property, not under his own name, because a Vanderbilt would have meant the price would have gone like that. So hired a lawyer and ended up buying about 300 tracts of land, which put together became about 400 square kilometers. Big piece of land. 200 square miles, okay? If you look at the mountains, if you walk over where that palm tree is, and you look southwest, the furthest mountain you can see is 19 miles away, which is about, 30 kilometers, and his land ended 2 kilometers on the other side of that mountain. So, once George became the landowner, he got a hold of the family's architect, Richard Morris Hunt, who was born in England, and who had designed all the other Vanderbilt mansions. George loved to travel. Whenever he went to a country, he would stop and learn the language. And loved reading. Wait until you see the library. 15,000 books. Many of them first editions. So, he said to his architect, let's go to France. I love France. And they visited Rouen, Chambord, Chenonceau, Azay-le-Rito. These are great castles. And that's why it looks like a French Renaissance castle. Then he got a hold of Frederick Law Olmsted, the great landscape architect. George said, now by this time, George, who had started with $10 million and already spent, we think, records were not very well kept, we think that he already spent about $6 million buying the land and having a house built. In the basement, you'll see photographs. So by this time, now he wants to landscape. He wants to turn the whole place into a park. And Olmsted said, you don't have the money for it. There's not enough money left. But here's what I propose. This is the eastern face of the house. The sun's rising over there. See that building? That's the stables. That's north, and that stops the wind. So he said, plant your garden on the south side because the land falls away and it's perfect for a garden. About 250 acres. That's about 100 hectares of gardens. On the other side of that wall are the Italian gardens. That's the water gardens with the lily pads, and about another 500 meters be down in the walled garden, which is beautiful. So George says, well, what do I do with all the rest of the land? And Olmsted said, if you had this kind of property in Europe, you would plant a forest and you would fill it with game. And that's what George did. So between 1890 and 1910, there were 3 million trees planted here. Okay? People look here and they think this is virgin forest. It's not. This was planted. So 1914, the family had some financial reverses and needed to get some money out of it. Because by now the forest is mature. The fast-growing trees have become big. So George went to Washington to sell 87,000 acres. That's about half of what he owned to the government. And while he was there, he had an appendicitis attack and died of a blood clot or peritonitis. We don't know which one. And so his wife, now George, I have to back up a little bit. When George opened the house in 1895, he was not married. He was single. This was a bachelor residence. And everybody said to George, you've got to get married. So 1897, he went to New York City, and in a nice evening party, he met a wonderful woman, Edith Stuyvesant Dresser. They got married in 1898 in Paris. 1900, they had a daughter born in that room with a little balcony. That's the Louis XV room. Cornelia. She got married in 1924 to a British diplomat by the name of John Cecil. And you're going to see the portrait of the Cecil family in one of the big parlors. So she had 2 boys. The oldest of her 2 boys today is 83 years old, William Cecil, and he owns Biltmore Estate.
Oh, wow.
Okay, that's why this is a private estate. His brother, who did not want to have the responsibility for the house, took his inheritance in the form of land, which he developed, and it's some of the most beautiful real estate in Asheville. Now, William Cecil, the 83-year-old gentleman, had 2 children, a boy and a girl, and his son is the CEO, the big boss of Biltmore Estate. So here we are today. 1,800 people work here. This is the 2nd largest employer in Asheville, after the hospital system. And it's a wonderful place to work. So welcome. Lots of things to do besides going in the house, which is really a very interesting experience. When you're done, everything is south of here. North of here are parking lots. So south are the gardens, and then 4 miles, 6 kilometers south of here is Antler Hill Village, where the winery is located. How many of you are under 21? Okay.
Yeah. Well, we're going to drive through the village.
Okay, very good.
But we're not going to.
Oh, you're not? Okay, very good.
Okay.
Well, whatever. Pleasure talking with you.
Thank you.
So,
Okay.
have a wonderful experience.